Good night and welcome to Mindful Life 404. No, it's not an error, it's just Mindful Life 404. We're streaming live here from the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the 5th of June in the year of our Lord 2024. This year is speeding along. We're already basically halfway through the year. Imagine that. Exam season is wrapping up for those who did CXC and CAPE. Those exams are closing in on the end. I hope you all have been studying and getting those grades that you studied for. Good luck. But we're talking other issues here. Once you're on the inside, make sure you double tap the screen over there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button there, and hit that like button on YouTube if you are viewing this live over there. If you are viewing it on the repeat too, you can also hit the like button there. I remember I had a previous live with a hiccup once, and I tried holding my breath to get that going, and the holding your breath thing doesn't seem to work that well. RL says that Chaguaramas Boardwalk was disappointing. I thought was a liming spot with food and bars. Well, RL, I'm sorry to report, sir. The kind of Chaguaramas Boardwalk you are looking for hasn't been there for 5-6 years. Now, don't get me wrong, when the boardwalk first came out, that I found that to be a good idea. It was well patronized. There were stores. There was an entire food court down at the end. I haven't been there in a while. I don't know what exists of the food court anymore. But there was a possibility there. I wouldn't doubt that some of it has to do with government and their typical mismanagement too, but also a side of it has to do with the fact that there were multiple shootings on the boardwalk. As I say nearly every night when we talk about our crime situation, the crime causes poverty. So if you shoot up 6 people on the boardwalk once, and then you have another murder on the boardwalk and another one, eventually you see that what the aim of the boardwalk was supposed to be was a family geared kind of location. Families aren't going to go around a place where there are regular shootings. That's just not going to happen. So you kill the family attraction of it with the crime, and what else are you going to do if families aren't coming there? How is that going to function? Did the hiccup go? Just checking if the hiccup went. I think it went. I think the hiccup went. Beautiful. Hopefully it doesn't come back. Alright, let's jump straight into the news, the stories that I have been finding interesting. The only fire in that cup is hot coffee, eh? Hot coffee. The only fire in that cup you see there is hot coffee. But jumping straight into the news, bill to be laid in the House. Moves to make Pan Trinidad and Tobago's national instrument. And I'm sure many people will be very shocked to know that the pan is not Trinidad and Tobago's national instrument. That's news. A bill to be laid in Parliament on Friday, the National Musical Instrument Bill 2024, paves the way for the official declaration of Pan as this country's national instrument. Newsday noted that on the June 7th order paper, Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts Randall Mitchell is set to bring the bill, followed by the Finance Bill. Last year, Independent Senator Suniti Miraj filed a private motion calling for Pan to be officially declared as the national instrument. And I am just kind of still in consternation that 2024, and we have only now seen to do this. Isn't this kind of typical of the colonial era countries? We made something, the value is there, instead of slapping our name on it everywhere it goes. No, we just leave it in the ether to float around. And every Caribbean country calls themselves the home of Pan, etc. And bear in mind, for all this time, we have had people in Parliament. There have been people in Parliament whose jobs it always was to raise these issues as pertaining to matters of law. Mitchell said government agreed that PAN should be declared the national instrument and further determined having regard to stakeholders including PAN Trinbago and the PAN advocates, that simple legislation would give meaningful effect to the declaration. The bill has 4 clauses and the third and fourth ones are the most important, Mitchell said. Clause 3 was the official declaration and Clause 4 placed a positive obligation on the minister responsible for culture to lay a report biennially before Parliament on the recognition, status, promotion, development and impact of the steel pan at national, regional and international levels. The effect of this clause is to place in the public domain through the Parliament a report on what all stakeholders, including government, are doing to promote, develop and advance the steel pan locally and internationally with a view to ensuring constant and never-ending development and advancement of the national instrument. So, as part of this law recognizing the instrument as our national instrument, there's going to be an obligation on whoever is the minister in charge of culture to every 2 years, I believe, bring a report to Parliament and outline exactly what is being done to promote and expand this steel pan throughout the world and locally. Interesting. Michael Modesto says, see how school lies to us. They taught us that steel pan was our national instrument. I feel like I heard that in school too. I feel like I heard that in school too. Like a teacher may have lied to us on that. Good evening, Richard Glubman. I feel like I have to go back in school and find some of our social studies teachers and have a little discussion with them. Because I feel like in my little mind, I knew Trinidad and Tobago's national instrument was the pan. It just wasn't declared legally. Well, if it wasn't declared legally, then was it the case? You know, as you know, if per se there may be officers of the law and something isn't declared legally, then is it the case? Nah, man. Something like that, it's either you need it to be declared legally or it doesn't need to be declared legally. Look at that. If you Google right now what is the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago, you will get the steel pan. So, like, didn't they know that there was a legal step that could have been made there? I've heard conversations like that, Michael Modesto, that we don't own the rights to pan and it's owned elsewhere. I've heard that. I don't know the facts of the case. I haven't dug into it, so I really don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is the case. I wouldn't be surprised if it is indeed the case. In 1992, then Prime Minister Patrick Manning declared that the pan was a national symbol, and the bill's passage would legitimize the instrument as a cultural and national symbol. So there's that. Yes, I know there are different types of pans, but nonetheless, if you are the recognized creator of the instrument, whether someone makes an edit to the fine-tuning of the pan doesn't change the fact of who would hold those rights. So if you make a 12-string guitar, it's still a guitar. If you make a 7-string guitar, it's still a guitar. Yes, it is, J. McKing. So somebody seems to be struggling on some part with that information. Didn't the government take some company to court? I'm not sure. I feel like I've heard that before, but again, I'm not sure. I suppose it would have to be some international court if they had to do that. Let's jump into some quick crime talk. You know, crime talk is always around the corner in Trinidad and Tobago. Frustrated, fed up Hines says crime fighting being thwarted. National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines caught a frustrated, angry figure during a press conference on June 4th, complaining to journalists that his ministries and the government's fight against crime continues to be thwarted for a wide and varied number of reasons. He spoke at his office on Abercrombie Street in Port of Spain the day after a quadruple murder which began near a school in Gonzales. Hines said he wanted to account to the nation on the many obstacles the government was facing in dealing with crime. He wanted to account to the nation. You know, be accountable. And that's what he's doing here. Going through the obstacles that the government is facing. Now, I'll say this at the start, because I say this nearly every time they say things like this. These kinds of statements aren't reassuring to the public. If the people in charge of our country are saying that there are obstacles preventing them from making our country not be the murder capital of the Caribbean, then you are saying you are unable to do the job. As Richard Glubman rightfully asks, how is that being accountable? Coming to me and saying I can't do the job, is that really accountability? Well, I guess it's accountability if you're ready to give up your portfolio. You say, okay, I can't do the job, so I resign the portfolio. But how are you being accountable if you come to me and say you can't do the job, but you're remaining in the job? What's the point of telling me this? Among the obstacles was the use of challenges against the Constitution, which often hindered crime-fighting progress. He then cited cases where legal loopholes and delay tactics were used not only to thwart the state's effort to fight crime, but to make such efforts more difficult to carry out. And here's the thing. People have a right to challenge the Constitution. How is it an obstacle to the government that people are questioning whether what you're doing is lining up to the Constitution? That's the right of the people. If people are questioning if your laws are lining up to the Constitution, the solution to that is to make sure you make constitutional laws. That's the solution. not to be angry that people are questioning the constitutionality of your laws. That's the process. He then cited cases where legal loopholes and delay tactics were used not only to thwart the state's effort to fight crime, but to make such efforts more difficult to carry out. And here's the thing. Are you telling me that your legal minds inside of the PNM are unable to close the legal loopholes? You are saying that legal loopholes are causing the problems. Can't you close those? Aren't you all in charge of of writing the laws? Kerry Trim is saying, so you are saying that it's okay for someone to get bail for murder. Yes, I am saying it's okay. I went through this discussion when it was brought up back then too. And if you listen to the Privy Council, go read the ruling that the Privy Council made on that bail for murder statement. And it's clear why it was made. Because the Parliament does not have the legal authority to hold someone in prison before they are convicted by a jury of their peers. And for the Parliament to pass a law saying that this accusation of a crime is unbailable. The Parliament is saying that all we need to do is accuse you of a crime and you are imprisoned. That's what being unbailable means. And what the point the Privy Council made is that you can have bail refused on murder accused. You don't have to have a law that makes it everyone ever accused of murder cannot access bail. Because bear in mind, it's not that people that are guilty of murder getting bail. No, people who are accused of murder and they are waiting on their trial may apply for bail, go before a judge. The judge listens to the details of the case and grants or does not grant the bail. That's where the system is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be that in Parliament they discuss this and say that no one is going to get bail. So some police can make a trumped up murder accusation on me. Once I am charged, that's it. That's what the bail is there for. And especially in a system like ours, where we have cases going on for 20 years. That was the basis of the man who won that case on the appeal, on the bail amendment appeal. Because he was, I believe he was in prison 16? I can't remember the number of years, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the guy, when he was released, was murdered anyway. But that's irrelevant to the fact. The fact is, he was in prison for a long time. When his case eventually reached, they did not find him guilty. And he was freed. So he was kept in prison for multiple years. And then freed, saying, okay, we have no evidence, you're guilty. So how could you jail me for multiple years? But, Joe, yes, enough evidence must be there for the DPP to allow a charge to go forward. But enough evidence for a charge is not enough evidence necessarily for a conviction. And then you are just moving the power to jail people into the hands of the DPP. The DPP is not supposed to have that power. That when the DPP says so, you go to prison. That's a scary amount of power to put in a public servant's hand. It's not supposed to be like that. He says, okay, we charge you and we can see if we can find the evidence to prove this case. Michael Modesto says, what you think of El Salvador's approach to gangs, and you think the same can be done here? I'll answer the second part first. No, I don't really think the same can be done here for many reasons. For one, I think the multiculturalism in Trinidad and Tobago would make that a lot more difficult. El Salvador is much more homogeneous than Trinidad and Tobago is. And homogeneous in many different ways, not only in ethnicity, but also in religion. So to get everyone to go along with a plan is much easier in countries like that. In Trinidad and Tobago, if you start arresting all the gang members and you see, for example, a racial makeup of all the gang members that is heavily in one ethnic side, how is that going to go over on the populace? So there are different things that make it a lot more complicated. Also, we are under the Privy Council. We don't have our own Supreme Court inside here. So, what's going to happen the moment you start arresting everyone that looks like a gangster? They're all going to hire a certain freedom law chambers, and they are all going to line up at the Privy Council. So, no, I don't actually think the same can be done here. Although I don't have a problem with what was done in El Salvador. I don't. And I think it's a good thing. I think that's actually the practical purpose of politics. The idea of politics is for us as a group to get things done that we want. It's not that we are supposed to make rules that none of us benefit by and we must all just follow these rules blindly. That the rules become more important than the people. That's not really true. The purpose of politics is the affairs of the people. And if the affairs of the people can't actually be handled by the politics, then the politics isn't functional. So I'll say that's a proper use of politics in that sense. What happened to the CCJ? Nothing. The CCJ is still right there. On what El Salvador did, well, it's been a while since I read through the details, but basically they built a 40,000 plus person prison. All right, well, you have to get kind of the history of El Salvador first. A lot of Central and South America struggled for a very long time with the influence of the United States also. They toppled governments, they rose up governments, they interfered a lot. And also cruelty inside of the country. There was a lot of instability. There was civil war, I think, in El Salvador for over a decade. And then there was a lot of instability going on. That level of instability led to lots of gangs making their homes there. One of the main gangs, or many of them, were founded in the United States and came home to El Salvador and tortured the nation. The murder rate was one of the top 5 in the world. One of the main problems was the gangs, as Trinidad and Tobago gangs are trying to do more and more now, the gangs were extorting every business place from small to large, which puts a serious strain on the economy. Remember, crime leads to poverty. So that was making it very difficult, and lots of politicians were being murdered. It was all a big difficult mess. Bukele came in, I believe first he was attempting to do as many other politicians did and try to negotiate with the gangs and allow the gangs, to be more peaceful and, make our way there. But then the gangs, I believe they held a city hostage because he didn't do something they wanted or something to that effect. And he changed his strategy. I believe he had to fire some of the Supreme Court. So many people who are watchdogs of liberal institutions are not pleased because what he did was illiberal. He did an authoritarian move. He took control of the highest courts. He took control of the highest political houses, used that control to slam through emergency laws that allowed them to arrest basically everyone who looked like a gangster. Because the gangsters tattooed their gang signs on them. And he figured, why was it that we have to try to find all this excess information and go through 10 years of court case to prove that the guy who is admitting by the tattoo across his forehead that he belongs to a gang? So, took them all up, imprisoned them, and the murder rate greatly fell. The country's economy skyrocketed. People who fled the country during the gangland Hades are returning. El Salvador is having a repatriation from the United States of their citizens because their citizens are looking home and seeing things are looking up. Now, the scary thing, as some people point out, is what comes next. Okay, so if he takes care of the gangs, he takes care of the murder rate, but he takes supreme power to do so, what will he do next? Will he be able to relinquish that power and allow citizens to have freedom? Will he hold on to that power till death do us part? Would he eventually become corrupted by the power as so many others are? But Nathan, human rights and social issues of violence like poverty. He didn't care. It wasn't the poverty. They didn't look for the URP program. They didn't look for MUST or YTEP or to give those boys work or to get them fathers in the home or to get them guidance counselors. No. No. Prison. Big up Christmas list. Good night. I have been really busy and absent. Yeah, bro. Yeah, Sherry Berry. And well, I don't know if to say democracy has failed because he was democratically elected. He was democratically elected at the end of the day. He didn't seize power through a coup. He was democratically elected. And a lot of what he did through the democratic process, basically. It's just that he didn't do it in line with the liberal institutional principles. The principles of the liberal world order. The rules-based order. Remember our Prime Minister assenting to the rules-based order? No, he didn't do it according to that. But he was democratically elected. That's not saying that democracy failed. Because what you realize many times in many places is if you were to get the pulse of the people, the multitude of people, a lot of them aren't pleased with the status quo. He more or less took a drastic decision, I guess. Yep, he did. But this is all of this also to add in. I am not of the assumption that democracy is automatically the best form of governance either. I am not of that view. I don't assume that. As the quote goes, democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting about what's for dinner. And you'd guess how that goes. So I don't believe Vox Populi, Vox Dei. I actually don't believe that. I don't believe that the majority of people should have the say on whatever happens. I don't think so. Some countries need a strong armed leader. I think all countries need a strong leader. It's according to what you mean by strong arm. I think strong leadership is needed in any country. Weak leadership doesn't work. So yes, I agree. Strong leadership is needed. But in case Mr. Hines is worried about what he could do, someone is throwing their hat in the ring again. Griffith tells PM, Hines can't deal with crime. Let me help. I figured that Trini Hotep. National Transformation Alliance leader Gary Griffith is calling on the Prime Minister to put their political differences aside and allow him to help the government combat the spiraling crime. As a former Commissioner of Police and a former Minister of National Security, I'm willing, yet again, to let you know that I am willing to help because our country desperately needs it, Griffith said in an NTA video statement on June 5th. Sylvan Trinidad asks, what's your view on those successful dictatorships? I think they aren't necessarily that plentiful. And I think dictatorships work best as monarchies. Here's what I'm going to say. Yes, I'm going to talk about the African one too, Abu Friday. It works best as monarchies. The idea of a monarchy is a familial idea where the prominent family that can command support within the region is given supremacy. And their success is literally linked and hinged to the countries. To me, that makes more sense, as seen even in the Arabian countries, than just the Putin style Richard Glubman says there, or the military junta as you were speaking about that many of those African countries did. Because the strongman military junta, Sir Abu Friday, it's not white man lying propaganda. Go read the accounts of other African brothers who wrote about the history of what happened under, what's his name, Mbunga in Congo. Go read about what happened in Congo when they got their freedom, in Rwanda when they got their freedom, in the whole of the Sahel when they got their freedom. Read about Nigeria and see what the strong men did. No, not the white man propaganda. No. Go read African accounts of what happened. Many of those men, because what happened a lot in Africa, it wasn't like that monarchy style thing. When the colonists came in, they had under Mobutu, right? They had under their control massive swaths of land that had a multitude of varying tribes and groups inside there. And when they left and left the random drawings on the ground of countries, what ended up happening is different tribes began trying to get their strongman to take preeminence. And it's still happening. That's the strongman style. Because you see, if there's tribal strife within our country, and you're telling me that what the country needs is a strong man, a strong arm leader, well, I want my tribe mate to be that strongman leader. I don't want your tribesman to be the strong arm leader. So what that inevitably leads to is a cycle of civil war upon civil war upon civil war upon civil war, as we each fight to try to be the strong arm leader that our country needs. Because we need that strong arm leader, you know. Black power. And black power killing out blacks. Keep fighting to try to be the strongman leader. Not understanding that what the Republican democracies was a compromise for peace. Power corrupts, Richard Glubman says, and that's why I would say it's 5 years. But here's the problem, Richard. They voted in Putin, but it seems like they will never vote him out. If we vote in a Putin-like person, the nature of being a Putin-like person is you will make sure that you cannot be voted out. They don't stay for 5 years. And you have to understand the mentality. You have to understand the mentality of someone like that. If I am the kind of person with the kind of ego that believes my skill as a single authoritarian dictator is the kind that will lead this country to prosperity, why would I ever give up that? Because I am the one who will lead the country to prosperity. In your opinion, what style of governance do you endorse? I endorse decentralized Republican-styled democracy, where representatives represent, but the power is as decentralized as possible. Here's the thing that I realize is a problem with all of those. The United States was an example of that. They were an example of that decentralization. Originally, that was their original idea. But power centralizes. It's just the nature of power. If you look at it in Trinidad and Tobago, with each passing law that a government passes, they increase the centrality and the power of the government. So it's nearly like if we need a style of governance that every 100 years has a natural revolution built into it that resets the government to a very small decentralized government, and slowly it ratchets its way back up to a strong centralized government, then we reset it again, which is, I know, wishful thinking, but that might be it. Otherwise than that, listen, I could really nearly have the feeling for monarchy. I could nearly have the feeling, because like small monarchy, as in if I have the resources and expand my area, and no, they're a republic, federal republic. If I have the resources to expand the area that I own, shouldn't I be able to rule it? And I may have the belief that people with vested interest in the land that they own may be the best rulers for it. That might be an archaic one, but who knows? Is the United... Yeah, I answered that. They're a federal republic, but they choose their Republican candidates by democratic vote. Representative Democratic Republic, yeah. Their elections are based on a democratic vote, but their governance is based on representative, on representation in the Republican manner, and they are federated. But yeah, Gary throw his hat in the ring, people. What you all say for that? You feel Dr. Rowley will take him up on his offer for help? Going into talking about the economy and governance styles also, an interesting piece on another group looking to govern our country, a group that I am actually very scared of. Not because of their personalities, but because of their ideologies. I'm worried about that group. I don't really want them in power. Has democracy worked for Trinidad and Tobago and our resources since independence? What do you mean by worked? What do you mean by worked, Abu Friday? You see, the problem with humanity, and this is a problem many young people get. I'm going to say it, Mikhail Modesto, right after I address the question here. Many young people struggle with it. They compare an imperfect solution that was used in reality as it laid out before the people that were there to some theoretical, utopian, imaginary, perfected place. So, alright, Trinidad is not the picture of heaven and earth and paradise. Granted. Does that mean that democracy didn't work and some other method would have been more successful? Which other method would have been more successful? So for me to say that democracy didn't work, I would have to know which other method would have worked better. Because worked, as far as worked could be, is that we haven't had a civil war in our country. We haven't had much racial violence in our country. We have had relatively high economic benefits in our country. What do you mean by worked? The group I'm talking about that I am worried about though, Abdullah. 75% of workers not unionized. Movement for Social Justice leader David Abdullah lamented 3/4 of workers in Trinidad and Tobago do not belong to a trade union. Speaking to reporters on June 5th at a briefing in Woodford Square, Port of Spain, he was joined by OWTU officials to launch a campaign to encourage people to join trade unions in protection of their rights in the lead up to Labor Day on June 19th. The trio later distributed leaflets to people on Frederick Street explaining their rights to minimum wage, national insurance, maternity protection, occupational health and safety, and retrenchment and severance benefits. Abdullah gave reporters figures which indicated trade union membership has plummeted over the years from about 65% to 25% of the workforce. When I joined the trade union movement way back in 1977, it was 65 to 70% of the labor force was unionized. That has flipped in the last 40 odd years. It's not peculiar to TT. This is a global thing as a result of neoliberal capitalist economic policies designed to weaken the trade union movement and weaken workers' power to enable capital to accumulate more and more wealth for the 1%. I worry about these people because the ideological underpinnings of many unionists is socialism. And when he speaks about capitalism on a negative note, you kind of get the idea where he's going. The problem with these people is capitalism means you get to own your stuff. Anytime and you're talking about capitalism as a bad thing, I like owning my stuff. I don't care if you tell me if I don't own my stuff, you will help me more. I don't believe you and I don't trust you. I don't want you there. And don't you think there's an answer why the unions are decreasing? Not just because the capitalists and their lying treachery. No, many people are recognizing that these unionists are very rich themselves. I am nearly certain that the head of this union is part of the global 1%. Y'all doubt that? Y'all think that this union leader lives the same lifestyle that the lowest member of his union lives? You know, as they believe everyone shares everything equally in the socialist ideal. We saw this shot already. Another union leader jumped in the partnership back in 2010. And he was supposed to be the workers' rights arm of the partnership. My boy fully out, become a millionaire, and disappear from the national conversation. Anybody knows that name? Anybody has seen that name for the last decade? But no. No. Believe these unionists and come and give them your power. You see, when they talk about workers and the workers' power, Sylvan, you don't know the union head that joined the partnership, sir, and disappeared from the public sphere? Google it. People at some point in time would start to recognize. Mac something. Minister of Labor in the partnership. Mackel. When they talk about workers and the workers' rights, you have to understand that every worker doesn't have rights. Every worker can't have a say. What they actually mean is you give us your power as a person, and now we, the individuals, will wield that power. I don't trust these people. Yes, I know, but I don't trust the unions. And unions, to me, unions are best for lower than middle workers. If you are a better than average worker, a union doesn't help you. The union doesn't help you if you are better than average worker. A better than average worker, you want to negotiate to get better than the average workers. If I want to put out more to get more, a union will never negotiate that for me. They don't want that. They want us all to get the same. So if I am interested in excellence and rising above, I want nothing to do with a union. I don't want that. Don't trust these people a bit. And they believe basically that much more should be free. They're upset that Petrotrin closed down. We were supposed to still have that. I'm sure they might say Carney was still supposed to be open too. And with all of these conversations, we're seeing talk from Mr. Imbert, CDAP under serious strain. Imbert warns it is difficult to fund free medicine healthcare services. It is proving quite difficult to finance the purchase of free pharmaceuticals, including the Chronic Disease Assistance Program and all the other free services that are available in the health sector. And to find the $500 million that's needed to supplement the Health Ministry's allocation for the rest of the fiscal year is going to prove to be very difficult. Finance Minister Colin Burt indicated this at yesterday's meeting of Parliament's Standing Finance Committee at the Red House, Port of Spain. This dealt with the supplementation to 12 divisions of the funding which they received in 2024 budget. The supplementation being given now totals $2,328,099,600. The Energy Ministry received the highest supplementation while the Health Ministry received the third highest. The funding covers CDAP with $1.4 million for HPV vaccines and $555.9 million for pharmaceuticals. The breakdown of the latter included $132 million oncology drugs, $20.6 million HIV drugs, $40.5 million in antibiotics, $60 million in NCD drugs, $48.7 million in psychiatry, and $84.8 million in non-pharmaceuticals. Joe says, what is NIS and health surcharge for? Well, NIS just lost $2 billion this past year. Well, NIF, sorry, the fund that we are supposed to be paid NIS out of. So there's that the money that is collected isn't enough. That's for one. As they say with socialism, you always run out of other people's money. Abu Friday says, how come none of these conglomerates never reopen the sugar industry if it's so profitable as claimed? Haha! Because it is not. It is not. If it was, they would have. Why didn't the union buy Petrotrin on a moment's notice and turn it around to profitability? So, those funds aren't enough. The money isn't spreading as far as it should. And Mr. Imbert is speaking as if healthcare may be on the cutting block. Reality is a hard battle to fight against. Added to that, we're watching the education to Gadsby Dolly. More money to pay primary school teachers. Education Minister Dr. Nyan Gadsby Dolly says part of the $144 million supplementation the ministry is seeking, in addition to what it received in the budget, is to pay money owed to primary school teachers. All this supplementation is such a strange thing. So the supplementation makes the whole practice of the budget kind of nonsensical. Why are you reading me a budget if we know halfway through the year you're going to come with a supplementation where we really find out how much the ministries are going to use? What's the point of this budget? A good bit of people do pay NIS and a health surcharge, but even the people that do, for the people that do, it's just not enough. Many construction workers, but we pay. If you're working somewhere, construction, and they aren't paying it for you, get in contact with me, a better employer. We pay NIS. Another 100-something million for education ministry. Is all of it sustainable? And then we have Mr. Abdullah and the Movement for Social Justice waiting in the wings saying that we need to increase all of these. And our goodly friends from South America pay it? I am almost certain they do not. But why would they? For a second you thought that. Oh, well, if you're privately insured, that's pointless to pay. And while this is going on, the government is trying to collect some more money, but the PSA is giving them a fight. PSA condemns government tax plans. PSA President Leroy Butty says the union has remained true to its word to take its challenge of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Act to the Privy Council in response to the Court of Appeal granting a limited stay of the operationalization of the TTRL until September. The PSA's president chastised the government for wanting to push ahead because it was depending heavily on tighter and greater tax enforcement to raise revenue to run the country. If it is that that's their hope with the TTRA, Trinidad is heading for some difficult times ahead. Mr. Imbert is already saying like these things aren't going to be left being paid for very much longer. The government seems to be desperate to get a whole new taxation system in, while the public service, and this is what we were speaking about previously, this is why it's difficult for us to do the Bukele options, etc. Yeah, the government is trying to change the Revenue Authority, trying to change taxation. The Public Service Association could sue you straight to the Privy Council, and there's nothing the government could do to stop that. Absolutely nothing. Alia, let me go a little lighter note before we look to dive out. I mean, it's not really lighter, but it's lighter. Fellas, fellas out there, I agree, Mikhail Modesto, it's said regularly that you cannot tax a country into wealth. That's not going to happen. Abu Friday, you aren't the only one. Fellas, listen to this and take this story as advice. The hiccup come back, as advice to really and truly very closely guard your 3 points, fellas. Fellas, the ladies out there different. It's not the same ladies of yesteryear, fellas. It's different times. Wow. Hiccup come back with a vengeance. Pick up with a vengeance. What you know about 3 points? Well, you see, I'm a guy. I got my 3 points long time. My 3 points safe. Or else say my partner does pass his whole salary every week to his woman and they seem happy. Maybe the woman know how to save, eh? Maybe the woman know how to save. The advice. We fight it before we fight it again. Tobago man beaten, kidnapped on way to woman's home. Several people are now in custody in Tobago after a 20-year-old Pembroke man was assaulted, kidnapped, and robbed. Oh gosh. And it's 20 the youth was it? Exact Michael Modesto. I happy on the inside and I real happy on the inside. Outside there sketchy, bad. A 20-year-old youth now. 20 is not very old in a boy. He now come out the teenager game. Senior Superintendent in charge of the Tobago Division, Rod Hill Kirk, said on June 4th that is now engaging the attention of the police. Persons are now in police custody and the police are continuing inquiries. It is likely that persons may be charged soon. Reports said around 10 p.m. on June 4th, the man was at his home. Fellas, if you're in your home, stay in your home. He doesn't start off bad. You were in your home. Around 10 p.m. on June 4th, the man was at his home when a woman he knew invited him to visit her at her home on Argyle Main Road. The man said the woman told him she would arrange transport. He said approximately an hour later, a white vehicle arrived at his home and the driver said he was there to take him to the woman's house. Bro, that's a red flag. Like, sir, who are you? This is why it's so important that we not be delusional in it. You see, I don't know how many of y'all see those online shows and podcasts and stuff where they ask people to rate themselves. They ask people to rate themselves out of 10. And lots of young women especially rate themselves as 10s when they clearly are not. This is the problem with this. As a youth, you had to know how wet you are. Brother man, are you so wet that a young lady at 10 in the night will organize a hired ride to bring you over to her house? Like, brother, your game on that level, sir? Like, stop. When you get this call, go look yourself in the mirror. Watch yourself honestly. Look at your jawline. Watch the chest. Take out your phone and check your bank account. And ask yourself earnestly, is this too good to be true? Wetty start to feel bite up. Exactly. He didn't think it through. He didn't think it through. The man got into the car, but as they approached their destination, the car stopped and two gunmen approached. They ordered the man out of the vehicle and began beating him. They then took him into a forested area nearby and tied him to a tree. The bandits robbed the man of his jersey, pants, slippers, cell phone, and $1,000 in cash, and threatened to kill him if his mother did not give them $30,000. They then left. The victim was able to free himself and reported the matter to the Roxborough police station. Youth man. Poor little youth man. I was just trying to drink out the hiccup for a bit there, RL, but I was coming back to that. A woman calls you to come over at 10 p.m. in the night. What store open at 10 p.m. in the night? You go into her house. It had no bottles to buy in her house. What you doing with $1,000 in your pocket? Going to the woman's house at 10 p.m. in the night? Sir. Like, that sound like the flick you make with your phone and your charger only. You went, that's a journey. You pick up your phone, wrap your charger around your hand, chuck it in your pocket, and you're gone. What else you need? You was going to purchase. I see. That seems like a more likely possibility, that there may have been an attempt to purchase. And earlier, I don't know if you all were in the live for the other story like this, but it happened again. But apparently someone was arrested now. Bail for teen accused of robbing man who met for a date on Grindr. A Port of Spain teenager was granted $20,000 bail yesterday after he appeared virtually before Master Margaret Sukraj Goswami, charged with robbing a man who sought to meet another he met on Grindr. And they called the youth man name. So now everybody know you out on Grindr hunting for victims. Kadeem Brown, 18, was ordered to stay indoors between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. and ordered to stay by his great aunt in central Trinidad until the end of the matter. He's alleged to have used violence when he robbed a 26-year-old man on May 28th. The man was robbed $14,500 in valuables after the victim met a man on Grindr. The victim met with a man he met on the app around 11 a.m. in the vicinity of the All Stars Panyard on Duke Street, Port of Spain. It is alleged that after walking to Nelson Street with the man, like, brother, you into what you're into. How it reached to Nelson? Like, brother, is Nelson some kind of down low undercover gay club that I don't know about? How are you reaching to Nelson? Dalip, I don't know if it's the same incident, you know? I don't know if it's the same incident. With the school teacher, that was the one we read before with the school teacher. The thing with the school teacher is he met him at a bar. This one, they didn't say he met him at a bar. They say he met by the panyard. I'll say a lot of these youths also don't have much people awareness and dating experience, brother man. The one was a 26-year-old man. And an 18-year-old youth man pull you in for the rope ups. You are a big 26-year-old man and an 18-year-old youth trick you into the rope ups. This is what makes me believe it's not the teacher, because I believe the teacher was older than 26 too. The victim was robbed of his iPhone valued at $8,000, an Apple Watch, and Apple AirPods and bank cards. Police reported that the victim was robbed and beaten by 5 men in Nelson Street apartment who ran off after the attack. Brown was represented by Farid Ali and will reappear in court on July 3rd. Good night, Smithy. Good night, good night, good night. We're looking to dive out now anyway. You're looking to dive out now anyway. It's not that long we have. That was the last one there for the night. Anyway. Fellas, which of us are you swinging? Protect your 3 points. No lady ain't calling you over and sending a ride for you at 10 in the night, brother man. Brother man. Brother man. You're not the wet lord out there. Relax yourself. Protect your 3 points. As Trini Otep always says, be mindful, not mindless. Nelson Street does not seem like where you go to find your best grinder matchups. I disagree with your lifestyle. Personally, I do. I'll let it be known. I don't agree with it. But say, if you, I can disagree with what I want. If you want to do your thing, I don't think doing your thing will be very successful on Nelson Street. Yeah, Starbucks, Trin City, West Mall, you know, there are other locations, UE, you know, Gandhi Avenue or something. Alright, Kerry Trim. Okay, Kerry Trim. On that note, that's all we have for now, people. Oh my goodness. Somebody said the police station. What are you trying to say, Omas? Omas, what do you mean by the police station? What are you saying about our law enforcement fighters? Alright, so yes, on that note, people, I hope you are educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live. Why are 2 random coconut trees just being displayed there? This seems to be getting frictious. I will be out, people. Enjoy your night. Enjoy your night. Be safe out there. Stay home. Outside there sketchy. Don't go and lose your 3 points. Go find a nice woman and marry and make a family now, boy. Oh gosh. Oh gosh.